Hello there. This is Greg Cass at Ion Cannon, and you're listening to the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Great pull, kid.
Are you listening to any of this?
Yes, we're listening.
Oh yeah, what did I just say?
Are you listening to any of this?
You've seen the show, and like us, you have questions.
Ooh, that was a good one, but try this one on for size.
No question should be left off your list.
Whoa. I got a crazy theory, but hear me out.
But you better have some spares.
Oh, that was one of mine. All right, let's do this instead.
With me, as always, is my friend and Card Squadron winger.
This is Greg Cass, a.k.a. Ion Cannon.
We've recorded at home and across the U.S.
Last summer, we were from the Boston Common. This week, we're in Chicago.
This is day 3 of celebration.
The show has had many names, but the purpose is the same. Let's share some time at the table.
Ding ding, it's time for breakfast.
Welcome to the Breakfast Pack, a Rebel Base Card micro podcast series. A returning Rebel Base Card podcast series that asks more questions than it answers. Today on Breakfast Pack number 94, Our Flag Means Breakfast. We're talking about Skeleton Crew's 5th installment that debuted on Disney Plus on Tuesday, December 24th, otherwise known as Christmas Eve. With my co-host and Card Squadron winger, Gregory Cass from IonCannon.com on assignment this week. But I got a couple of people. I'll just say that instead. Returning back to the breakfast table is friend of the show, Franc Mulder, a.k.a. Mr. Daft Prawn on many of the socials. Frank, thank you for joining us, and how you been doing?
Thank you for inviting me along. It's really exciting to be asked. It's been a little while. Doing great. Just got over Christmas, of course, and the build up to New Year's on now. So yeah, having a great time, and I think we're going to have a great time tonight as well.
I think so. Although we should sidebar at some point and talk about the birder you have in the family. Those were some exciting pictures of what was the bird that was causing all the fuss?
We have sandhill cranes. We have a wildlife refuge just up the road from us, a few miles. So we have the sandhill cranes, and they're in the numbers of the thousands, or if not 10,000 this time of year. So we got out early on a very cold morning. Just sun was coming up, and we got lucky and saw plenty. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Also coming back to the show on the heels of an excellent year in review show is one half of the Star Wars reactions team, Aaron Harris. One thing I just want to say off the top here, how's Chopper? How's Chopper doing?
He is holding up pretty good. He's surrounded by more boxes right now than he cares for. And if I don't say nice things, he'll probably start chucking them at me across the room. But he is in good shape. He survived Hurricane Milton with flying colors and is in probably the best shape of pretty much anything around here, to be honest. It's kind of sad to say. But yeah, he's good. He's good.
Excellent. No, I just had finished the year in review, and you and David both. What a great show, and it was a nice thing. I just don't have it together to do a year in review. I don't know why. I kind of back off because there are a lot of them in my feed, but it is kind of nice to catch up. And you guys have had some nice shows, and I liked the percentage of growth on the YouTube channel. What was it? It was like 800% or something. I was like,
yeah. I was like, when I saw that number, I'm like, I got to mess with David with this, and I'm like. We were like 800%. We went from 11 to 88 followers on YouTube. It's 800%. It makes it sound a lot larger than what it is, but
however the math
it was still
works.
Good. It was still great growth. I'll take it.
Well, and Frank, there was a lot of folks that had kind of, moved on from Twitter, starting a number of years back. I know Hive had its moment. It's still out there, but Blue Sky. But have you dabbled? I can't remember whether you dabbled in Blue Sky or did you kind of stick on Threads and Instagram? What have you been kind of rocking on the socials lately?
Yeah, when I moved away from Twitter, I stuck with Instagram primarily, and of course then Threads came along. And because that operated so much like Twitter, I enjoyed that. I liked where you were confined with what you wanted to say. You had to be thoughtful about what you wanted to say. Mm-hmm. You maybe had to type out everything you want to say and then just edit it down so it would fit. Blue Sky right now as well. Blue Sky is a lot of fun. Like you say, there's been a massive uptake in users there, and I still have a Hive account. I go on there and like your posts that I see.
I think you're the only one.
Maybe, I don't know, but I see you and Colby on there all the time. I haven't posted in there for some time now. I really should make more of an effort, but primarily Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky right now.
Well, and Aaron, and kind of talking about this, kind of just picking up where you guys were leaving off, where it's like, there is only so much time in the day, but as any audience or anybody fractures, especially an audience as large as the Star Wars community, you kind of have to go where it is. But I agree with Frank where there is a little different vibe in each one, and although I do cross post on a lot, sometimes. You can kind of tune to what, but I threw my podcast feed on YouTube, but not much there. But I did open up a couple other avenues because I think Anchor and now Spotify allowed you to more easily maneuver in some of those. So like a lot of folks are just everywhere, and it'll be interesting if TikTok hangs around or if it kind of goes away. I'm sure it'll come back in another form. I mean, hello, the Snapchat. But you just got to go where the audience is, and it's not necessarily. I don't think it's so much on the audience; it's on us, right? It's like if you want to grow, or if you want to avail yourself to an audience, got to go where the audience is. And if they're not there anymore, Hive, you got to go where they are. At any rate, but
no, I completely agree. It's a it's a gamble. It's a game. It's you just got to know. They were so old. Kenny Rogers song. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. So yeah, you just got to each one. I like how you said each one has its own personality, and has their different feels and everything. And just if you try to go and fit into each one, you'll drive yourself insane. So the way we just handle it, the way we just deal with it, with that reactions, is we just be ourselves. We just try to be positive, upbeat, and promote positivity and kindness and all that. And just spread that across all the platforms. And what happens. And we saw a good 2024, all things considered. So
I think so. What ended up being your favorite Advent calendar Lego piece?
Ooh,
just throwing you a curve there before we get started with the real stuff.
The Ghost, of course, it was the Ghost. It was probably the easiest build, funnest build. I mean, there were a lot of great builds this year. I think the only one that really threw me was the very last one, on the 24th. I had no clue what ship that was. And then somebody messaged me and told me it was apparently from the Young Jedi Adventures.
Oh, cartoon. It was one of those Jedi Starfighters?
It was the Crimson, what they call the Crimson Hawk or something like that. It was that ship from there. And I'm like, okay. And I pulled up a picture. I'm like, yeah, that's it. so now I need to go back and watch Young Jedi Adventures and catch up with that, because apparently there's several seasons of that I'm behind on now.
Dr. Cass is crying somewhere inside going, yes. Hey, speaking of Ghost, Frank, yeah, you're shaking your head. You know what I'm talking about. You know I'm going to ask you. So let's go ahead and get started in the real toy. We'll get to the questions later. Trust me on this, but I don't have a year in review show. Steve Sansweet's out there. Listen to that show. It's a great interview. But this is the last one for the year. So let's get this all in. Frank, talk to me about this ship.
This beast. So mine is actually still in a brown box to my right. It came right on Christmas Eve. Was almost delivered to the wrong house. I knew it was coming, so I was watching out for it. And I walked out of my house front door, and the guy's strolling off. I said, "I think you'll find that's for me." And he double checked, triple checked, and right enough it was. And now Greg Cass, with his muscles, says he was not impacted or he didn't notice the weight of this thing. I found it really heavy. The box, if you were to stack the boxes that the Razor Crest came in, it's probably, if you were to lay the Razor Crest box flat, it's probably 4 or 5 tall of that. It's massive. I've got a photo that I keep on meaning to put onto Instagram, but yeah, it's a huge box. And with Christmas and everything, I've just not had the opportunity to open it yet. So I'm looking for a good time where I can set time aside to really enjoy everything that's in it. Of course, I've seen people opening theirs and seeing these beautiful figures on those mosaic boards, the beautiful art backing. So it's an exciting thing to be sitting there, but I'm not into it just yet.
And not to drag this out any longer, Frank, but I mean, like, I would say, give this to HasLab. The packaging that we've seen on the pictures for the Ghost is incredible. And I was very impressed. I was like, okay, this was not just something pretty slapped together. They, each piece very thoughtfully put in there. And I'm like, hey, if you're going to spend that kind of money on a ship, I think you got your money's worth as far as is concerned. Will the figures stay in their packaging, or will they be put throughout the Ghost?
No, I'm going to keep them in the packaging. I've got my Chopper and Sabine right behind me in star cases, and they'll do the same. The couple that came with the Razor Crest are the same there in protectors on the shelf being displayed. So I'll keep mine in the packaging. Yeah, but like you say, HasLab, I mean, they knocked it out of the park with this one. I think the community have been asking for this one for a long time. With the success of the Razor Crest, the massive success of the Razor Crest, and that kind of the damp squib of the Rancor, and then this one coming straight afterwards. This seemed to me, even with it being a significantly higher price than the Razor Crest, I felt this was a no-brainer for many people.
That looks nice.
You have the money in space. The space is most important.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's just something I thought it was a good machine. It was a good, I think, spotlight for HasLab, because I think there's so many nooks and crannies on the Ghost that I do think that this is an excellent one. I mean, obviously the Razor Crest was awesome. The Ghost outlives it, just a number of shows. But yeah, I think with the vintage, it's going to be very nice. Yeah, speaking of finding things on Christmas, I think I put this in the threads, but I haven't put any pictures yet on Instagram. I got from a dear friend, I got the 1977 Star Wars lunchbox, and the best part about it was he cleaned up a lot of the rust, because a lot of those have rust all throughout because it's aluminum. But inside were places where the kid who had it put the old Star Wars stickers on the inside of the lunchbox. And I'm like, I nearly cried, because I'm like, that's exactly what you would have done. Now, for some of you out there, the thermos was not included. If you have the thermos, if you have the complete set, it's not cheap. But the lunchbox, and I also like the fact that it wasn't necessarily, it was a little beaten up. You got some dents, you got some dings. I'm like, now this kid loved this lunchbox. And, you can tell it was used well. And I'm like, there you go. That's what you kind of want to see. You want to have something like what you're talking about, Frank. You want to have something where you can use. There's certainly places that you can put stuff that are like you won't open. We all have stuff that's sealed where we're not going to touch it. But I do like to have things that you can kind of hold on to, and you get that tactile feel to it. And you go, look, I might just take some of my figs and put it in this lunchbox that I got loose that I don't have room for, because I think my Darth Vader case is overflowing at the moment. Especially with all those new Phantom Menace figs I got, because I've been Comtech chip crazy lately, and I've got a lot of Comtech chips and the reader. I broke that out at Christmas. And anyway,
I've got to ask, do you have a favorite Comtech chip? Is there one phrase or character you like above all the others so far?
Boy, what's interesting is so many of the ancillary characters from Phantom Menace got a figure, got a chip. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 at least Qui-Gons that are in there, because I think there was a wave of like 10 or 12, and then they just kept coming out. And, but, oh, shoot, what I was, and they're not the voices. I'm going to try to record some of the voices for the podcast. Mm-hmm. But I think Senator Palpatine, or the Emperor's ones, are hilarious, because it's sort of this 8-bit, threatening type voice, or like, no, because he's talking to Padme about like the Senate and the things like that, and you're going, oh, okay, this is so funny. So it's kind of the lines, but I don't know who at Hasbro or Kenner or whatever had to come up and do the voices. But I mean, there's a ton of these and all these characters, and so it's going to take a while to go through. And I've got the chain, the reader itself was amazing to open because the reader has a belt, like a belt. You can hook it on your belt. Like whoever was doing this got beat the heck up in school. I'm sorry. But then they include a chain, like something you'd see from a light, that you can put all your contact chips on. Like, I'm just going to walk around the school. I got my reader. I got my whole chain, so like something like hooked to your wallet or something that has all these chips, and you're like, yeah, I can RFID. But if you're thinking this is 1998, I did a whole show on this 3 or 4 weeks ago. But it's still amazing. So I was like with a D battery in this thing, like this thing is as big as a Nokia phone. I'm just putting chips up and it'll just say, and I think each chip had like 3 or 4 different things. And so I'm just going to have to go through. And so that, I think, as busy as Christmas was, hopefully the new year, I'm just going to be sitting in a corner somewhere just like chip, chip, chip. Leave me alone. And then, the thing has some built-in, so I can just kind of go down and, pew pew voices. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to be lost in this one. But $18 well spent, I think. Yeah. All right. I think I'm supposed to be doing a different show. All right. If you are joining us for the first time at the end of the year, where have you been? This is an insert series podcast, I promise you, in the regular feed where Frank, Aaron, and I are going to trade questions to each other that we have not talked about before about the latest episode of Skeleton Crew. And since we're talking about a brand new Star Wars series show, I'm going to remind anyone there'll be spoilers ahead, invite you to come back, and please listen after you've had a chance to watch. Now, normally this is the time where Greg and I talk about the Greg's List. Now, these are a selection of podcasts and other assorted media, whether you're reading them, whether you're listening to them, whether you're watching them on YouTube, things that you like to talk about or like things that you discovered that you may want to pass along and introduce somebody else to. It's one of my favorite parts of the show because it highlights just some of the amazing work being done out there in the community. We hope you would check out some or all these. And maybe find a new content creator you want to support. Now, it's been a crazy week, and that's why we're recording late, and so is everybody else. But I'm curious, Frank, have you had a chance to listen, watch, or read anything else on Skeleton Crew lately, or something you might just want to highlight?
Yeah, so there's the usual rotation of podcasts. The Colby Cast, you and Greg here on our Flag Means Breakfast. CWK, of course. I saw Blast Points popped up today. So did CWK. I left those alone. I like to try and come to our conversations as fresh as I can. One of the ones that doesn't always do Star Wars, but are very good whatever they're doing, is the Legal Geeks. Ooh. And they recently did a piece on episode 4 that covered a whole range of topics, including kidnap, child soldiers, all this kind of stuff. So heavy topics dealt with in a very much legal sense, but also in a light manner. And they'll take on anything. Before Halloween, there was a lot of Universal Monster stuff. So Legal Geeks is a lot of fun if you have time to check them out.
I like it. Aaron, how about you? I know you guys always also have been busy doing your own shows. I know you did, so you could have this time off. You did some of your shows in advance, but then I roped you back in. But have you had a chance to listen, watch, or read anything else regarding Skeleton Crew or anything else you just like to highlight?
It has been a very busy couple of weeks, so I can't say I've listened or followed up on anything Skeleton Crew. I'm actually about 3 weeks behind on my normal podcast rotation of course, your show and Coffee with Kenobi and Colby Cast and Skywalking through Neverland. Those tend to be my general rotation. But one thing I have been keeping up with is, while dealing with our social media, is I have been having a lot of fun following a guy on TikTok, goes by the name Star Wars Dad. And he just has so much fun. He just did a video this past week where he was trying to sell Uncle Ben and Aunt Beru's homestead. He's like just vacated, and he's kind of green screened in trying to clean up the blast marks. But yeah, he's been a lot of fun to follow, and that's kind of where my Star Wars enjoyment's been coming the last couple of weeks, just with the chaos around here. So
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I'm sort of in that same camp. I know that Coffee with Kobe Dan's had, Father Jimmy and Tom Gross, our mutual friend, on, and they've been doing regular shows. Fanta Tracks, somehow the Making Tracks guys can do it in 25 minutes. And I'm like, wow, a 25-minute podcast. Who'd have thought that? Yeah, everybody kind of, I'm looking away going, I don't think I could do a 25-minute. But I always kind of enjoy Thank the Maker. I had reactions on my list even before I got a hold of you, Aaron. So always in my thoughts. But yeah, it's going to be a tough week because, with same thing with next week. You're going to have New Year's Eve and New Year's right in the middle of it. And I think it was funny. We have a thread, and I think it was Christmas Eve, and I was just dead tired, right? I'm getting ready to go. And all of a sudden I start hearing our thread going, hey, we're checking in. I'm going, oh, that's right. There's an episode. So at any rate. And then last night I'm like furiously typing to get my review in because I joined the Fanta Tracks pool, and a lot of folks doing some great work over there. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Fanta Tracks, please do. There's a lot better writers than I am on this pool. Dan Lowe and company, Ross Hollabin's in on that. Ton of folks. There's like 5 or 6. And so I've been getting the chops in, but it's getting a little easier. And I've been making great use of the voice memo features on your phone. Because I was like thinking last night before I started typing, I was just doing voice memos, and now you can do a lot of, you can capture a lot of those transcriptions. I copy them into notes, and then I have like my bullet points, and now I can kind of craft those into something that looks like an actual paragraph with, with notation. But I'm telling you, it's nice because, you'll get these ideas, and you're like, I'm a target. I can't write any of this down, but I can talk into my phone because I'm holding it with one hand. And so I'm just saying the tools are out there to help you out, and it's been kind of fun and getting better and better. I might be invited back for Andor. I don't know, but at any rate, alrighty. So how this is going to work? We're going to go in order. We're going to go Frank, Aaron, and myself. And how this, like I said, this is going to work. We're going to trade some questions. We're going to let everybody kind of chime in on those, and we'll go from there. All right, Frank, I am kind of curious. We'll tell you what. Let's do this before we hop in, and Greg would remind you on this. Any opening statements on this episode?
None that haven't already been said by Jen. With the, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
No I in team. That was excellent. So I want to mention that here.
All righty. Aaron, any opening statements before we get started with Frank's first question?
No, it was just to say it was a fun episode. It's a lot of craziness, a lot of childish antics, which I enjoyed. So yeah, it was great. So I can't wait to hear everybody's questions.
All right, Frank, first question.
Okay, so my first question relates to KB. She's kind of often been in the background when we've seen her in previous episodes. She often has those moments that are important to achieving a goal or moving the kids forward. But in this one, when they've got Y rope, I'm not sure, but SM-33 roped down to a bench, deactivated. She said that I think she says she's rerouted his memory chip. So I'm curious if she may have made some other modifications to his programming while she was doing that. Now, there's a couple of things that I noticed in the rest of the story that we were told this week. One may confirm it or give me a hint that that was the case. And of course, another one goes quite the opposite. So before expressing what those two little things are, what do you think? Any ancillary reprogramming being done by KB?
Oh yeah. No, he just took like one of my questions because that was amongst my mix.
Frank's played his game before.
I know that. I know this. I noticed that too. No, I definitely think she probably did some reprogramming. Mainly, and I think the dead Keith giveaway to that is the fact when he woke up and they started talking about and he didn't immediately try to rip him limb from limb. Like he did last episode. So it just kind of tends to that. And I think that's going to come back to play with the events of later in the episode. I think that's going to reprogramming is going to come back in because of the double cross. So
it's interesting because it's not quite a steal, but it was something I was thinking about just before we got on this call, and I started thinking about what is stronger with SM33, his programming, or the pirate code, which I guess in some ways is kind of a programming, because he does it, like, he'll yield to it, but it's sort of interesting going back to coming off of the table where he's, she rerouted something, but it didn't sound like it would, so it wouldn't override his circuits or something like that. But it doesn't sound like, could she have programmed in some of Asimov's laws? Don't know. But I think it's fair to say with any of this, don't take anything for granted. I think this entire episode was a bait and switch in some ways where, they were building things up and you were completely caught off guard. And there was so much that at one point I did actually scrape some of the audio and I was doing some transcribing of it, of the stories that, SM33 and, Jod was talking about, because there's so much in it that if you don't go back and watch this thing, good on, because I went back right before, I talked to Aaron. I'm like, I'm going to watch it again too, because I'm just missing things. And you're just like, as you're trying to put all this stuff together, it's like a whodunit. And so, but I have a feeling, like anything, there's a lot that's, I think the episodes are small enough that everything should be taken down. And I don't think there's too much throwaway here. It's a good question. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, so what got my thinking about it, I actually watched a third time just about 2 hours ago in preparation for this evening. And one of those little details I noticed, and without getting too far ahead in the story at this point, when they're in a chamber with the pool of acid, and they're looking around for Captain Renaud's sigil, his little icon, there's a moment when you see her scanning across the room, just looking around, seeing what she could see. And there's a spotlight that follows what seems to be where she's looking at. And that almost felt like, is she remoting somehow SM33 to use as that flashlight? Because I continued watching thinking, okay, does she have a flashlight in her hand? And she doesn't. I don't see anything to this point. I know she's got little flashing lights on that device on her head, but I don't think she's got a flashlight or anything that project lights. I was wondering if perhaps that was some kind of controlling him.
Well, and the other thing to consider is that even though the captain had put that deep command in him, the original captain, Captain Renaud, he could still operate. So it's not unreasonable to think that he could be operating on several different levels, right? He does start to try to take the kids into custody at the end, but we didn't really get too much further to see how much maybe KB or some of the other kids could push him. Or if there was something that, like you said, maybe KB, because they still got to get off the planet, that, that this might come back. So,
well, I think from what I watched and what I saw, it makes me wonder if whatever adjustments KB did, if she hadn't told everybody else she did. So, like, when Wim pulls the trigger and they make their big escape at the end, was that really necessary? Or did they just complicate things even more for them at this point? I wonder if I'm not thinking she revealed the extent of everything she did, because Jod was standing right there the whole time. And if you've done something to undermine somebody you kind of don't trust, you're not going to say, hey, I did this to screw this guy. So it's I think she probably had some secrets from the other kids as well.
Good one. Aaron, what is your first question?
This has been I have absolutely loved this series from episode 1. It has just been a fantastic adventure, a lot of great storytelling, a lot of questions left unanswered, and one of the biggest questions continued to just be put a magnifying glass on this is who is John Nawad? I mean, who is Captain Silvo? I mean, who's Crimson Jack? I mean, who's Dash Zinton? Who is Jod Zindwick? I mean, these are all aliases for the same guy. So who is this guy? Why does he have force powers? What's his story? And that's my big question. Who is this guy?
It's easy, Aaron. He's Professor Umium Gorlox. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
No, it's right there.
There's some from Zippio.
From Zippio. Frank, what do you think? Who was our man? Who was our man of many names?
Yeah, in perfect breakfast pack fashion, I took one of Aaron's. Aaron took one of mine, of course. It's open to so much interpretation. The way he has been behaving to this point, begrudgingly protective of the children to this point. This business is doing with manipulating objects. Some of the lines in this episode specifically do make you lean towards Force user, Padawan, perhaps. You know, we've seen Cal Kestis long after Order 66 work in a breaking yard, so you never really know what avenues may have been opened up to Padawans who were left themselves once Order 66 kicked off. With how he did go this time, and I'm sure we'll go into this in more depth later on, but he just seemed to be downright cruel, especially to Fern this time. I mean, pretty much violently so. And that just doesn't strike me as the behavior of a Jedi or someone who had previous experience with the Jedi Order. So is he just a pirate? I don't think that's the case either. I mean, that's clearly what he has become, to the point of all these aliases. So he's getting himself in hot water again and again and again, and managing to escape again and again and again. So it does seem that in the truest sense of the stories we've all heard of the seafaring types, he is simply a pirate nowadays. But there's clearly something that came before. I'm sure that will get revealed, but I have no clue. There's so many clues that they've provided so far that could take us in so many directions, and any one of them or none of them at all could be correct. So I'm lost at this point, and I'll let someone else see if they can come up with something better than that.
I think that they tripped over themselves this episode to show him using what appears to be the Force. And I had to look. At one point, I thought I saw something, that resembled, something that Haja had from Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it wasn't. I was seeing things. But it really wasn't until the end when he went back right before it cuts, and he looked over at that lightsaber. Now, obviously, anybody who's played any video game knows it's like you continually work to upgrade your weaponry. But he looked at that thing with intent. Like he went over, and so I have a feeling he was in the Jedi minor leagues at some point. Definitely is Force sensitive. I think it makes a much more interesting story. I mean, we've seen Cal Kestis. We've seen it with
Kanan Jarrus.
Thank you. With Kanan, that, a lot of these folks had to go into hiding, and some fared better than others. All had to, really bury themselves, but he might have just been out there quite on his own and has had to, to me, it starts making sense that why would he have many names is because he's had to. And in this case, he's just been a little more opportunistic, because there is no more order. There is no, nobody coming to make you a better person. You make the person. I thought that great line that he gave Wim, right, where he says, make your life the one you want to live. And he also talked about, all those attachments, forget them. But I think, whereas before he was quoting the Force lines to kind of impress Wim and them, there's something more to it. And I do think that he's had some level of training, or at least he's been around, but he's had to just kind of do it. But I absolutely loved what Jude Law has done with the character, especially in this episode. the guy just chews up scenery, and you're just like, anybody that can pull off the subtleties and still keep you guessing, you really need a heavy hitter, and I think that they really chose well. And I think these scenes, you wait for him, like, even to tell stories and things like that, you go, he is so good at what he does. And 5 episodes in, we're still scratching our heads. This is awesome.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, it is awesome. And here's what I think. And both of you kind of skirted around my thoughts, but my thoughts are this: he was a part of the order. He probably went in as a youngling, was a Padawan, but I think he got kicked out.
Ooh.
Because when he goes to get that saber and he pulls that saber into his hand, there's almost a look of contempt on his face at that point, where he is just almost like, I've got something. He has this look on his face like, I've got something over on somebody. And if he's got a lightsaber and that lightsaber is what caused it, he would have had to have got something over on the Jedi. Why would you want to get something over there? They wronged you somehow. But how you got kicked out of the order. So I think he probably wasn't the best Padawan. He probably just did not do well in his studies, or he dabbled a little too much with the dark side, and they basically just booted him out. He just got booted out. So then that led him to do whatever he had to do to survive. Many of the aliases, many of the names build up to becoming a pirate, which is why he still has part of him that has that caring side, because, he was a Jedi. He did have that training, and that compassion does come through every little bit, but he's also knows what he needs to do to survive, and he's not looking to back at those lessons to push his survival. He's trying to stay as far away from those Jedi lessons as someone could to survive.
I love the thought of him finally going, got it. You guys didn't think I was worthy. Look what I got. I like that. I like that angle a lot.
Yeah, he just has that crooked grin. He gets it, twists it around to look at it, and if you look at that, it's just a split second, because before the credits start rolling, he rolls it around and he just gets this grimace on his face. It's a smile, but it's a grimacing smile that's just tells you could write a book on.
All right. I'm going to take us back to the beginning, and I know it's not a long scene, but I have to ask you both, just how bad is Wendell at subterfuge? Because that was almost Abbott and Costello. What's in your hand? What's in the other hand? Can you show me both hands? But you could see him sweating. He's way out of his element, and having to do this and really kind of come with these plans on the fly. Although Numa puts together what looks like parts she got from a Radio Shack, which is also about as long as, probably it's been around longer than the Old Republic. If you want to talk about, out of date tech. But how do we feel about the Farah Wendell angle, and how are they going to pull this off? These folks are not, we're not talking James Bond here, guys.
Yeah, this seems a smack of desperation at this point. When Wendell's talking to Farah, they're saying that they don't believe that the supervisor is going to do anything. And, I've had discussion about whether the supervisor is an AI or a person or whatever, but either way, despite apparent loyalty all this way along, Wendell going off to work every day and doing what he needs to do and coming back, making sure Wim is staying in line until he isn't in spectacular fashion. It seems like everyone's really living in a structured society. Everything's going perfectly as long as they do what they're assigned to do. So this is real desperation. And it sounded like Numa wasn't supposed to be there. When Wendell says, what are you doing here? It sounds like it's almost like me just walking into someone I know's workplace and just strolling on through and saying, hey, I need to speak to you for a minute. So, yeah, it definitely smacks of desperation. I do understand that, of course, especially when they're thinking that that no one's going to help them out. The problem comes though is with it being so structured, with it being so strict, now to risk sending out a signal that I suppose has the potential to have an at-Akrin impact on at-Atin. I do see why keeping quiet is what will be the right thing to do by the supervisor's standards, but as these parents are becoming more desperate, I'm sure that their methods are going to become more extreme.
What do you think,
Yeah,
Aaron?
well said. I agree. It reeks of desperation. And he's definitely he's definitely not a James Bond. He definitely isn't. He's more of that Rowan Atkinson spy thing. I can't remember the name of that movie. More of a Mr. Bean type. But it's he definitely is. They're all desperate because their kids are missing, and I can, as a parent, I can understand that. But the level of desperation that they're at, because knowing how structured of a society we've seen this at being, to go against the grain so much, it just has it shows you how desperate they are to get the kids back, because they understand that unless they do something, they say point blank, they know the supervisor's not going to help. I mean, he says it, supervisor's not going to help. We have to take care. I mean, they have to take care of it on their own. If they know the supervisor's not going to help, which is a whole nother question that I had, but they have to act. They have to take that action, go against the grain, and possibly risk their entire planet to try to save their kids. And it brings up the question: do the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many?
Well said, well said. Yeah, and also I kind of thought that he would be on a more parallel track with Wim, who we saw kind of have his moment, not necessarily like Fern did in the previous episode, at kind of a climax or a crisis moment. It was really sort of a lull where things kind of calmed down, and it really kind of started catching up with Wim. I almost thought you could it gets almost overshadowed in this episode where everything else is going on, where you kind of forget that Wim is starting to kind of crack and maybe starting to kind of come to deal with. I love the little extra of when he talks about, I'm not going to see my mom and dad again, but he makes Jod aware he's not going to see his mom again because his mom is not there anymore. And I really like that, and I was surprised to see it. But I also loved seeing the perspiration on Wendell's head, and I also love to see I'll love to see this progression of him probably getting more and more desperate and hopefully better at this, because he's going to really need to up his game a bit, because he's not going to keep running into these kind of dumb security bots. It's probably going to get harder and harder, but I really love seeing how far he's going to go and what it's going to have to be, because I think it's going to be part of what's going to maybe unravel this society. I do think at the end, I don't think it's going to go back to the way it was for certain, but they're probably going to need some free thinkers and some folks that go, you know what, we got to start doing this a little differently. Otherwise, we're found.
Like you say, after seeing Wendell trying to hide that device behind his back, we do see where Wim gets some of his goofiness and from. It's clear what the origin of that is now. That's a hereditary trait.
Exactly. All right. Let's go another rotation. Frank, what do you still got on your list?
Okay, so the next thing I was thinking of was back in the treasure room. I've actually made it to the big old stash, the Cave of Wonders, if you like. And at the far end, of course, is a huge throne, which is what looks like a Weequay skull with a seat in the mouth for all intents and purposes. So, we always talk about low-hanging fruit, but does this potentially give us a connection to Hondo and Naka somewhere along the line? We still don't have a real time frame for when the Onyx Cinder had the mutiny, was crashed, and then how much later it was found. We've still not got a time. I don't recall having even a vague idea of time I've heard a lot of people talking about, these skeletons have turned to dust. I think it might have been Greg last week saying there's no meat on these bones. They're just dusty skeletons. So it seems like they've been there for a long old time. So I'm wondering if also, mentioning the lightsaber, it seemed to have, I didn't see where it was when we saw the wide shot, but it seems to be on top of an illuminated pillar, which nothing else is. So, Hondo and Naka again having some, relationship with Ezra and with Kanan over the years. Is this some kind of an indication that it could be going down that route? Why was that lightsaber so important that it was illuminated when nothing else was?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that lightsaber is a mystery in and of itself. Because it was on that pillar, was illuminated. I'd have to go back and rewatch to see if it was the only thing. I don't remember it being the only thing illuminated, but it was the one they focused on. But it was, honestly, I could see a Hondo connection very easily, but honestly, as I don't want to see the Hondo connection, because the story has been so good on its own with these new characters and these new stories. To me, dragging Hondo in would just, honestly, I feel would almost be a disrespect to the story they've been telling. Like, these characters can't support themselves, we have to bring Hondo in. So honestly, I would rather not see Hondo in this. And I love Hondo. I love Hondo and Naka. But I don't want to see him here be involved anywhere in this at this point. So I mean, I could see where the angle you're coming from. It definitely very well could be, but it also could just be that Rendar got it from a Jedi that his pirate team killed, his pirate crew killed, which can happen. So yeah, I don't. I'm going to lean more toward that side than I would be the Hondo connection, honestly.
Considering Captain Renaud's reputation, it wouldn't surprise me that Hondo and him would have crossed paths somewhere. I think that, from what they're saying of what Renaud did and, the star systems he terrorized, and you could tell when I looked back, like the third viewing, you could see that cave, that chamber went way back in the back, and there was just treasure all over the place. But I did love the fact that he put a throne that he could just look at it. And you're wondering, because obviously he had that, that hologram, or he's doing the log there where he's sitting there. I guess that's his desk. I mean, I guess if you're a pirate and you have all the treasure, your desk is basically a chair. You're not doing any paperwork. You're just kind of sitting there just looking at all the good stuff. But I would say that, we're going to, with 3 episodes left, we're going to have a lot of people after everybody. So it wouldn't surprise me to still see a Hondo as sort of a cameo, as like, I wouldn't go as far as like Rise of Skywalker, where you've got all the different ships reporting in and Wedge is there for a grand total of 2 seconds. But I could also totally see something like that where everybody and their mother's after it, and including the New Republic. So, if a well-placed free-for-all wouldn't hurt. But you're right, Aaron. I think that the story has been so strong, and Jude Law has done such a great job. Nick Frost, let's give it up for Nick Frost and the kids. Everybody has just gone gangbusters on this, and it's been a great standalone story. And these are characters that we're going to want to see more of. And I love that we haven't really seen too many egregious cameos. I mean, heck, we had Alfred Molina voicing an Ishi Tib, and you're like, that's awesome. And just like we had Angelica Houston do a voice in Bad Batch, and nothing ever was said of it. And you're just like, wait, how did we get, and Angelina Jolie would be interesting to have as a voice. But at any rate, we still don't know how long it's been out there. I think it's been a while. I think it's interesting that Renna did say Old Republic Mint. Mm-hmm. Once again, you're like, okay, it maybe it's not that long ago, but it's still been a while back. But yeah, just still episode 5, still a lot of mysteries, Frank.
Yeah, I got to say, after hearing Aaron talking so passionately about that, because I know he's the #1 Rebels fan that we all know. Yeah, I after hearing you now fall completely with that, I won't mind seeing him, but would probably prefer not to. To this point, I think the only real indication that we're in the Star Wars universe, bar the Aurebesh typeface, the credits, is a couple of X-Wings. Mm-hmm. That's really it. And like you say, 5 episodes in, and it's holding its own spectacularly with its cast, which are phenomenal. So, yeah, I think after hearing Aaron talk, yeah, if we get okay, and if we don't, perfectly fine too.
He, like I said, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but if he's going to show up at like Greg said, it needs to be a brief moment, like in a everybody chasing everybody down moment where everybody's coming in, or they end up on another planet at a starport and you see them walking in the background or something like that. I'm fine with, but just to plug him into the story I think it would lose it.
I'll amend myself, Aaron. I'm going to say if you're going to bring in Hondo, he needs to be on screen longer than Yoda in The Acolyte. Somewhere between Yoda and The Acolyte and Wedge and Rise of Skywalker is where the truth lies. But you get to Yoda and Acolyte, that's way too short.
He would have to be on screen long enough to hear, "Hello, my friend."
Yes, that's it. That's what I want.
Then Jod flips the communication off and goes, "Oh no, not now." and that's it. Yeah, I'd be fine with that. But
let your imagination fill in the rest.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. All right. What you got left on your list there, Mr. Harris?
Let's see here. The one thing that I was scratching my head about, and going back to the beginning of the episode, which we talked about a few minutes ago with the bad spy antics, was the statement that was made in the last episode, and it's made definitely in this episode too, about the supervisor not helping. And the question that had me scratch my head is, why won't the supervisor help? Why won't he help?
What do you think, Greg?
I think much like the pirate code, I think there is an @ code that is preventing, and I don't think our supervisor is human. I think much like the behind the green curtain in Oz, I think it's all a lot of smoke, mirrors, and droids. And I think if there was, I think it's just been on autopilot so long that they're just fine and dandy. It's interesting that, when you think of like currency, that there must be something to that metal that they're using in the credits. That, because we've seen the change of currency. I thought, didn't we see it in, it was either Clone Wars or Bad Batch where they were changing, it must have been Bad Batch where they were changing currency out. And, so your Old Republic credits were apparently apparently not, because, near mint, Old Republic, so whatever this is. And of course, also interesting that the Acid really liked that Republic credit. So there must be something to that. But, I think, soon it's going to probably be no Moss, but I think right now everything's on autopilot and very, very emotionless.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'm leaning more towards it being AI. If this was originally 9 planets, it would be so much easier to have them all like networked, all working towards the same goal. That being the case, if there is a a central purpose for this system that controls the planet, then as a program, it would be just caring, I suppose, about maintaining its path to completing a goal. And what we've seen so far on at in is just a strictly controlled, apparently comfortable community. How planet-wide that is, I'm going to assume that's planet-wide, or maybe it could just be a continent on a planet. We haven't got that idea yet either. We've seen them come flying in over various cities. I know that was at Akron, but they thought they were flying over at in. So maybe it's just a continent that's being controlled in each of these planets. But yeah, AI is where it would not surprise me, and that would be a little more emotionless, a little more cold.
Okay. But here's what I'm thinking. We have, of course, the barrier that's up. Nobody's supposed to be communicating off planet, this and that. But if it was really the mint of the Old Republic, there would have to be ships coming and going. There would have to be communication coming in from Old Republic government telling these people, have this shipment ready at this date. There would have to be that line of communication that would have to be there somewhere. And it would make sense that if you're trying to isolate the planet, you would limit that communication to the supervisor. So with them not wanting to allow people off world, at that point, the Old Republic has fallen. How do you explain you have this mint, you're creating this currency? Why is it not being sent off world anymore? Why is it just, it's got to be piling up somewhere. How do you explain that off? So I think whatever's in charge, whether there is an actual person supervisor or whether it's a computer, they know the Republic fell. So despite there being an emergency, which if there was an emergency like this in the days of the Old Republic, I'm sure a communication would have been sent to Coruscant, to the Jedi, and the Jedi would have been dispatched to solve it. But now that there's no Republic, the Old Republic fell, those communications lanes were probably closed and lost in the turnover to the Empire, and then in the Civil War that followed. So it just got lost in oblivion. And because communication was cut to protect Atten from the rest of the galaxy, he's not willing to risk his people and his planet to reach out further. So that's why I think the supervisor's not helping. It's because he knows it's not what it used to be out there. And he knows the Republic fell. He just probably has been cut off so long, doesn't know that the Empire subsequently fell and so forth.
Sort of interesting. I like that. I like that theory of how currency would have moved in and out, and sort of the planet may have been operating on a "don't call us, we'll call you," and what happened when those communications stopped. Because otherwise, yeah, if it's a mint makes money. At some point, you've got to have caverns and caverns of stuff, and no one has come to collect it. But you haven't had anything that either superseded the orders, or I like the line of thought that someone up high saw that and just put it down, or maybe they were in contact with some of the other planets, maybe on a supervisory level. Yeah. They were in contact with other planets, and once they started getting compromised, they were just like, we're shutting this down. It also, I think, lends more credence to the minds that Fern talked about in episode 1 underneath, where it's like, hey, if you screw up, they're going to send you under the mines and no one sees you again. I'm like, I bet you I still think Fern had there was more truth in that than it wasn't, that there's something underneath. And that's probably where the mint, where, endless supplies of money that's been kept being made all this time. But then again, it's interesting. You talk about the great work. It's like, well, how much do they know? Because obviously if you print too much money, you can devalue it. And so it's interesting that they are putting so much analysis in. I don't know. It's fascinating to think about these, and were the other planets mints as well? or were they partners in how, I hope we learn a little more about this. I know our time in this series is short, but much like we have heard a lot about Captain Renard, I like these little drippings of this, and hopefully we will hear more about all this, because the planet's going to have some splaining to do when all this really, if we assume that let's just say this is an enclosed season, maybe they'll do something else, but this story is going to be finished probably at episode 8, and a lot of things are going to have to fall, and they're not long episodes, 40-ish minutes tops, so a lot happening to happen. All right. This wouldn't be a breakfast pack without a couple of wild theories. So I'm going to throw something out because this is about the time we've gone through some of the serious matter. I'm going to put it out to both of you. Now, I have a crazy theory, but I'm curious what you have to think. Is Captain Renard still alive, and will we see him?
Yeah, Aaron shaking his head, and I agree. I don't think so. I don't think so. The story that was told by SM33 about how he saw Renard die matches pretty well to seeing that skeleton pinned to a wall with a dagger through his chest. I'm just going to go straight to a no. I think he's dust.
Fair enough. What do you think, Mr. Harris?
Ditto. No, he's not. He's as cold as Han was in Carbonite. He's kicked the can a few times over. He is not coming back like Palpatine, so he's done.
All right, so with Greg Cass not here to protect both of you from this theory, I'm gonna. There's a couple of things that bothered me. One was the fact that the hologram was not. You couldn't see him. 2, I kept going back to the story, and I put this into my fan review because I was like, it almost sounded at the beginning where they say, well, Renard's concubine betrayed him and stabbed him with his own dagger. Stab doesn't necessarily mean kill. And if you looked at the skeleton that was on the wall, he was attached to the wall. And I'm like, that's one large concubine. 2, when they talked about, SM33 talks about how the captain was seeing a mutiny coming. I think he was paranoid of everybody. He was killing people left and right at Akron. And I don't think that the concubine was excluded from that list. Now, SM33 also says that he, locked the controls in and he had the last left. So for me, I'm wondering also, and something's been bothering me since episode 1 or 2, SM33 had his hands on the airlock. So who shut SM33 off? Because he certainly survived the crash, but he was in sort of a turned off state. So I'm wondering if Renard did manage to escape before the ship crashed or got out as before the crew perished. Just because if this guy has all the reputation that he does, he would have had a backup plan because he saw something was coming and didn't trust anybody. That much is clear. But I think if it was sort of a one and done for him, we would have saw him on the chair. There would have been no need to skewer his vision because his story supposedly was done. But I'm still thinking we still have one more scene with him left up. Am I crazy or what, gentlemen?
Yeah, before your
diatribe,
rant,
yes,
your diatribe.
That's fair.
I would have said yes. But thinking back, you mentioned the airlock and everything. And with SM33 being shut down at the airlock controls, it got me thinking too. Remember in that first episode, they were talking about how that area where they found the ship was forbidden. Why would it have been forbidden if possibly the captain survived and was captured and they blocked off his ship? They blocked off that area because that's where his ship crashed. They didn't want anybody going out there and finding the ship and finding a way off planet, that could reveal the location, because the supervisor knows the Republic fell.
See, now Aaron brings up another really interesting point there, because I was thinking, well, if this guy did survive and he had all these riches, this access to all of this money, wouldn't he be out there flexing? How invisible would somebody who had access to an endless mint be to pirates galaxy wide? So that makes a really good point that, okay, what if he survived and was taken captive rather than had died? So now we have a third potential outcome of the crashing of the Onyx Cinder.
Well, and also, and I'll go on record by saying I do believe the Earth is round. I just want to put that out there, just to as a basis, right? Just that control point. But but as a follow-up question, does Rened, his fate, does it serve the story anymore if he is still around or was around for a time after? Is there any more that you could mine from that you think would help this series? Because I would imagine that you both have an idea of how this is ending. But we have been pleasantly surprised so far by all this backstory of what we thought was just going to be a straight up kids adventure. Great. We've got the mysterious, planets of wonder. We've got this great pirate backstory. Is there anything that he could still serve the story with by surviving what apparently was supposed to be his fate?
I'm wondering if this would work best as one of those old pirate lost booty stories. So as it is, with him being dead. Like you're saying, the possibilities for the end of this season, series, whichever it may be, obviously we want the kids to be okay, but under what circumstances that will be is anyone's guess. Are they going to return to their normal old lives? That seems unlikely. They'd be uncontrollable children after seeing all of that and experiencing all that to just go back to days at school, tests for seeing what you wanted to do when you're older and what job you might fit into. So that doesn't seem likely. It seems that if the planet is exposed, it makes it incredibly vulnerable. So the reason for it being originally hidden is lost. I mean, that could be a point of it. It could be a tragic end where that does become revealed to the rest of the galaxy. I'd prefer the pirate to stay dead, that captain to stay dead, just so it is like that kind of thing that's turned into myth. And now we're finding the pieces that make the myth real. You keep on hearing like these stories of like El Dorado and that kind of stuff, these ancient myths, and of course this isn't as ancient as that as far as we can tell, but still it's exciting to be seeing these little breadcrumbs. We do know he's a real guy. We've got a ship now, we've got his horde now, we've got that broken up degraded message of him talking. So what comes next in these next few episodes is going to be incredibly exciting for me.
Let me throw this out there, just because I've had time to sit here and just let my mind go. Let's say Greg's right. He is alive. Where is he? Let's play this out. He did survive the crash. He did escape the Onyx Cinder. He was taken captive by the security droids. And that's how they discovered the Republic fell.
Ooh. And
because he was captured and taken, and he then got to see this literally this perfect utopia, we see a story of what Star Wars is perfectly known for. We see a story of redemption where he realizes, if I do what I came here to do, this place is lost. So he changes his tune. He pushes for the complete lockdown at Atten so that nobody can find it. Nobody knows it's there, because he destroyed all the evidence and locked it in his vault, which nobody has access to till this episode. So he knows it's safe and sound. So when the Onyx Cinder takes off, he of course ends up, because of this, they don't want to publicize him being out to the planet. So he ends up being like an advisor, or basically up in upper leadership that nobody really knows about. As though they block off that. That's why that area is forbidden. Then when it takes off, that's why they're like, nope, we cannot do anything at this point because this is what's happened. We know this because Renner told us, so we're done. That's why we cannot help recover these kids. And just to play devil's advocate, what if Renner is the supervisor?
Well, it would be interesting because you'd almost have like the dog that caught the car, whereas like he has all this endless treasure and they're just going to keep making it.
Mm-hmm.
But now he can't, he either can't spend it or he can't, he was already saying he was going to need a full crew to get the stuff off there.
Yep.
Maybe to some extent he kind of got in his own loop where it's like, I have everything I want and then some, but I can't do anything with it, which would have been an interesting twist on, so you think of, you're like, what is your idea of treasure and what would happen if you had everything but couldn't do anything with it? That's almost like a prison in its own. It's fascinating. And I'm telling you, I'm 2 minutes away from building a newsletter for my new Star Wars conspiracy theory podcast. This is what happens when Greg's not on the show. I get off the rails and I get honest. But at any rate, but it's fascinating to think like, what could he still serve the story, or is his story, or was that just it? And like anything else, there's just so much that for us in sort of I wouldn't say it's a kids type show, but there's a lot you can read into, and there's just so much meat that you can just go off and go, hey, I'm just going to have this. I'm going to have my own like fanfic about the Onyx Cinder, just because there's so much there, and it does to me, show how much care they put into this series. You thought like even going into Jod's betrayal, right? Everybody was like, he's, and then who wasn't surprised or, like shocked that like he could, like what, he's going to betray the kids. So it's like, there's so much more to this story than meets the eye that it's very easy to kind of like dive into these thoughts and theories. What do you think, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd say to that was when Jod is talking to him about, getting through some of those tests to get to that chamber, he makes it pretty clear that a pirate's first most valuable thing is treasure and not life. And I'm just wondering what it would be that would make a Blackbeard type, bloodthirsty, galactic faring pilot have that larger change of heart. Unless, as Aaron says there, could that information have been revealed while he is still captive? So there's nothing necessarily heroic about him, but the information does get to the people, the supervisor, whoever else is responsible for hiding and protecting at him. So yeah, I'm not sure about a change of heart quite so wondrous for a cutthroat.
Well, to play devil's advocate here, if you look at the story of Blackbeard, Blackbeard was ready to walk away from his piracy because of the love of a woman. And it was the governor of, I want to say it was Virginia or North Carolina, that literally pushed him back to sea. So, yes, he could have been a cutthroat when he arrived on Manhattan. Yes, he was a cutthroat when he was captured, but maybe the one person who was interacting with him through his captivity, that relationship bloomed and flourished into, this isn't all that, piracy and money isn't everything. This is what's right in front of me. And if I do what I set out to do, her and her whole world is gone. What have I done? So
now, wouldn't it be great with that line of thought that if the defense, should there ever need to be a defense of Manhattan, is led by
Renard?
Renard, yeah, wouldn't that be great? The one pirate that all the pirates aspire to be is the one that defends the planet from the pirates.
Yep.
Wow.
That would be so
I'm glad I'm
good.
here for this conversation this evening.
Y'all thought it was a throwaway question, right? This is why you listen to the end
Nothing's
of the
left on the
show.
cutting room floor. You know that.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to our Pringles can review, were there any other burning questions or any other like one-offs or shorts that was still on your list, or something you'd like to have us go before we give our final reviews?
I have one thought and one question.
Go for it.
So one thought kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier, and I've thought this since episode 1, and I know that this is a Disney property, and Disney like to tinker with things in playful little ways. And my thought about Akron, and all the rest, the words that came to my mind were experimental prototype communities of tomorrow. Epcot, right? Could this possibly have been from like way back? You hear people talk about Old Republic and then just Republic. Women class, when Neil, makes it straight there. You said you wanted to be a Jedi. Does that mean that this is just a kiddie wanting to be like a knight of old, or does he genuinely believe that that's something that's still a possibility nowadays? Aaron, you said earlier about how they're being protected from so much what's going on. They don't know about a war. When those 2 X-Wings turn up at Kim's, they're like, there come the goons. They seem to know nothing at all about anything that's happened, anything that we know as fans having watched from outside. So could these be experimental communities from like long ago? If there was ever any hint that something could go wrong with a galaxy being with the intent at least to be so perfect, and this is how they've run on to now. What do you think? It's kind of playful, but
no, I actually love that, because it is a thought that I had too, especially coming off of the High Republic books and everything with the Nihil and everything, and just the pure destruction that they were causing, to have this isolated community to see if perfection will work. It seems like it's like a little dome world, like a whole little Truman Show, and it fit perfectly. That idea had crossed my mind several times. So yeah, I could definitely see that. Absolutely, I could see that. And what would you do if you have an isolated experimental world? That'd be a great place to hide your mint. So I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Wholeheartedly makes perfect sense.
It's a great explanation of why the city looked so planned, to the point where it mirrors any suburb USA. But yeah, I think it does come down to where this society, even though it's doing the great work and there's all this infrastructure, there is this lacking. I love now taking this line, and don't think me too smart. It was just one of the few left I had on my sheet, where I love the line, "All who enter paradise must make the greatest sacrifice." And there is a sacrifice to this, is their connection to the rest of the galaxy, and really to sort of a life that isn't just stale work. And you can see Wim must not have been the only one that goes, you know what, there's got to be something more than this. I'm reading it, and it's just like, it's certainly not going to school to be a chartered accountant. There's got to be more than chartered accountancy. But yeah, I do think that, much like with Epcot, where it was originally supposed to be Walt's perfect village, but ended up just being more of a theme park, that there's a little bit of that in this as well. It's like it was meant to kind of be this, but it kind of evolved on its own into this very rigid, and probably even more so after, maybe if we think that somewhere down the line someone saw that the Republic died and they cut it off even further, the contact, because they're obviously reading about stuff that's happening outside. It's not just, they're not thinking they're the only planet. They know that there's the rest of the Republic, but to what extent they're allowed to interact with it. They might have been allowed to interact more back in the day, maybe, or at least on some level, but yeah, not a lot of news. And so it's kind of devolved into just this very rigid robotic type structure that seems to only have, an AI running it.
All right. Well, I just had another theory pop into my head while you were talking, Greg, and I feel I need to throw it out here too, just since we're throwing all these theories against the wall to see what sticks. What if Renard was originally from Adaton, left the planet because of a task or something, and never could get back? Turned to piracy, his whole goal trying to get back to Adaton, and ends up getting there at some point by crashing when the Onyx Cinder crashes. And it kind of leads me, the train of thought kind of led me to where, I'm jumping genre now. I'm jumping properties now. You go to Star Trek Generations, where Dr. Soren was in the Nexus, got ripped from the Nexus, and spends his entire life trying to get back to the Nexus, which was his place of perfect happiness and joy, where he had everything he wanted. He had his family back. He had everything back that made him happy. And what if that was Renard's story?
I love it. I would have lost good money. We would have had a Star Trek Generations reference in this show. However, I'm there for you. I'm all there for you.
If there's a way to work Star Trek in, I'm going to do it.
There you go.
Oh, good man. Across the streams, every chance you get, they're great.
Exactly.
And I just have one very simple question left to ask, if it's appropriate. Is it true that you can't play a shanty on a harp? You missed SM33 say that?
Oh. Yeah, no, I heard him say that. I don't.
I didn't even. I don't. Oh wow! All right. See,
when they're
I remember
walking through the spa world,
yeah,
and they walk past the son's playing the harp, and he's like, "You can't play a shanty on a harp."
Yeah, I mean, why couldn't you? But I mean, being a pirate, the harp would be a little bit more.
He had
fancier.
Frost had some of the best. Frost had some of the best moments, especially after he got the restraining bolt on. And this was one where he must have just had a ball because, like I said, the show makes a very good point of being very lighthearted from, Jod's introduction of the elders. They all come down on the crane to SM33 is just not having it as far as them turning this, I think one of my favorite lines he had was a cavalcade of fearsome, bloodthirsty buccaneers, no doubt. No, those look like pleasure ships. And I'm just like, it was so good. But yeah, I can't do a shanty on a harp. Such a great, that's what I'm like. I think, who is going to be the character you're going to miss after the series is done. I think SM33 is going to be very close.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Frank, what out of 10 Pringles cans, what are you giving episode 5 here?
I'm going to go with a solid 8 on this one. Still lots to answer. Nice reveals of things. It's a shame that Greg isn't here with us tonight because there was all those wonderful Indiana Jones type moments again that we've seen before in other series. So I'm going with a solid 8 on this one. Well played.
Aaron, what do you think?
I'm going to go with 8 full cans and a mini can. So an 8.5. But it was just fantastic. This series just keeps, every episode has gotten better and better. So at this rate, I don't even know what to expect from the final episodes, but it's just been fantastic. And this was, I say it on our show all the time. This has been the best episode yet. And it has, but they just keep getting better.
I agree. I part of me wants to go 9 just because I think this is, like you said, this is one of the best ones yet. I think it played to its strength. I think that one of the things that made the previous episode not hit so well is because I think there was a lot they tried to chew off, and I think it kind of got bogged down. And I think when this show stays very quick, it's very deliberate, goes straight forward. I think it does very well. And, at this point, Jude Law doesn't have to do very much, and he just really can sell it. And the characters and everything around it, they've really done it. I'm going to go 8.5. I still think we've still got some the best is yet to come on this, but I do think that I agree, Aaron, this is the best episode yet, and it's been really fun. I think we all bought in and didn't see the betrayal coming, or maybe we did, but it was sold so well that he pulled it off, and you really bought into it. And I think the kids just getting out at the last moment, and I think all this really made such a great episode. So very happy to see it do so well, and I can't wait to read all these great reviews and everything, listen to everything else. Once I finish, yapping, I can't wait to shut up and listen. But at any rate, all right. Well, I need to get you guys going so we can get off to the weekend and so forth. But I know that we talked earlier, Frank, about some of the socials you've been on, but if someone wants to interact or find you on the socials, where can they do so, sir?
Okay, so that's going to be on Instagram, Hive, Threads, and Blue Sky at Mr Daft Prawn. I also love getting trades and sending trades, having new trading partners in the Star Wars Card Trader app. And there we trade under the Daft Prawns. Oh,
and nice. And what we just finished the 12 days of Tops on the Tops digital apps.
And now we got the
2 days on
to New Year.
Now we got to count down to New Year. I missed 2 days on Marvel, and it was killing me. But anyway. But yes, and I know we just had the year in review on Star Wars Reactions. Once again, congratulations on another great year, and you're going to be busy next year. I'm like, phew, I'm glad I'm not them, because they're real busy. But anyway, where can people find you and David on the socials?
Oh man, you can find us everywhere. We're on Facebook and what David lovingly refers to as Twitter X at SW Reaction Pod. Then of course everywhere else, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Pinterest, Tumblr, YouTube, Blue Sky, all at SW Reactions. We are there. Hit us up. I'm running those socials, so if you reach out to the show, you'll get me. So I'm always available to talk Star Wars, do everything whenever, all the time. I love it. So.
And thank you for being on the show. Thank you, both of you. And if you have a question for the Breakfast Pack, you can find us on the socials, Twitter X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, Hive, and we're slipping in a little bit on Fantatrax as part of the review pool for the Skeleton Crew. And of course, you can find my compatriot there, Greg Cass, on the long take review with Jen Sapchakchai and company. They're getting into Oscar season. They're going to have a very busy January and February. I do not envy them at all, because they've got a lot of movies and a lot of reviews to talk about. So you can find Greg there. Alrighty. I'd like this to go longer, because I could have people talk about my crazy theories. Rennet is alive. I'm sticking with that. It's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But then we'd have to do some real work. I'm going down with that ship. I know it. But I'm just going to hey, I have a TeePublic account. I'm going to do the Rennet is alive. It's like, was it, what the Ahsoka lives? Yeah, I'm going to do Rennet lives. That's going to be my next shirt. Oh, yeah, because they haven't copyrighted the pirate hat. There we go. See? Look at this. Coming soon to a TeePublic store near you. Rented lives. All right. Don't copyright. I'm going to trademark it. But we're going to be back after episode 6. I might not be back. I mean, this show may go on without me, because they're like, no one's going to listen to you anymore. We even more questions and crazy theories we hope someone else answers. So until then, for Frank, Aaron, and myself, we now return you to your podcast playlist, already in progress.
This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.
That's it.